Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Boyce, just coming to you with some Gold League goodness out of the map Entombed Valley. Spawning up here in the top right-hand corner, we do have K-Bar as the red Protoss, and down here in the bottom left-hand corner, we do have Q-Dump as the blue Terran. I think I might have messed up the name of the map, but it's Entombed Valley. I think I might have said that, but I really don't know. I kind of just talk on the fly, and sometimes I forget what I'm trying to say. So anyway, both of these players have amazingly similar names. I'm not sure if this was a custom game or what. I think this was played on the ladder because they're red versus blue, and honestly, who the hell picks red versus blue in a custom game? But we do have Q-Dump versus K-Bar. They're like, I don't know what Q-Dump means. I think K-Bar might mean like Kellogg's bar, like the cereal bar things, and maybe he's like a sponsored player in Gold League that, you know, Kellogg's just wanted to throw out there. However, he has not yet dropped any Kellogg's advertisements, so that might be completely wrong judgment on my part. So, you know, a little bit of, yeah, that was weird. Okay, well, you know, I'm just going to go with it. It looks like we have K-Bar now dropping down the Chrono Boost onto his own Nexus, getting those probes up nice and fast. Q-Dump is just building his barracks at the top of the ramp, which is, again, yet another time where I'm like, why are you doing that? That's a poor decision, because, honestly, I don't understand what you're going to do with walls versus Protoss. I guess I can kind of see him. But, I mean, if you have a wall, it just means that you're going to get force fielded on one of these buildings. It's going to get knocked in by Zealots, and your units aren't going to be able to shoot enough of the Zealots to actually kill them, or enough of the Stalkers, especially if they're down here. Because you probably won't even have range on the Stalkers. You'll have range on, like, the 4 Zealots swinging at the base, and then you'll have just a scattered amount of Stalkers at the base of the ramp shooting up and at the supply depot. And because it's force fielded, you can't actually shoot back at it because your Marines have to be another 3 blocks deep from that Stalker line. So it kind of ends up being, you know, a little bit worse for you than just having the Protoss get into your base and engage. And that sounds kind of weird, but honestly, fighting a Protoss at a choke point is not a good idea, because Protosses kind of have great control when it comes to choke points. If you ever try to move a Terran army down a choke point, they'll just force field it in half, and then you're like, well, shit, where's half my army? Oh, it got split off. It's kind of like a vortex, except, you know, it's a force field. So your units are just stuck on the upper half of the wall, and then you're fighting with half your army versus their entire army. And that's kind of just a little bit on the rough side. Anyway, it would appear that Q-Dump is just going to be going for it, so he is building out that Marine first. We have the Cybernetics Core now coming out from K-Bar. I would not be surprised to see a very fast Warp Gate coming out, and a very fast Stalker also coming out to hopefully deny a little bit of the scouting information from this SCV. This SCV will, of course, see the Chrono Boost on the Gateway instead of the Cybernetics Core or the Nexus, and that's kind of sketchy. Usually people don't do that. Usually people Chrono Boost the Warp Gate research, or at least the probes. I mean, unless you're going for something super aggressive like 2 gates, you usually don't, you know, put a Chrono Boost on the Warp Gate. So that's just strange and a little bit odd to do. Anyway, we do have Q-Dump building up his command center in the main base, and 2 bunkers going down, and this is, I don't know, I don't like this decision quite so much, just because you don't really need 2 bunkers at all at any point ever, and you especially don't need 2 bunkers on the way up to your main base, because honestly, what are these 2 bunkers going to do? I never really understood that. If you're gonna put bunkers down, put them down at this ramp, and put them on opposite sides, because honestly, if you lose your natural and your opponent is working still off his natural and his third, there's no hope there. You really need to put all of your defensive lines at the furthest point out, or at least the furthest easily defendable point out from your base to do, you know, well. It looks like we have the 3 gateways and the robotics facility now coming up. This is kind of Artosis pylon, but not quite, especially with this pylon going down. It'll actually be perfectly fine. It's really just the Cybernetics Core that's out on its own, and maybe this gateway, but I think this gateway is also powered by this pylon, so he should be fine. It looks like we have a little bit of a scouting mission for this SCV. He's checking all of the normal pylon spots, making sure that there's nothing tricky going on with K-Bar. It would appear that K-Bar has the Stalker now coming up, and it will be able to snipe off this SCV, which should be a little bit annoying for Q-Dump, because, you know, losing an SCV early on for no reason is not good, but neither is losing a Stalker, or half a Stalker's whole health early on. That's not good either. And actually, the Stalker might go down. Oh, Stalker, run! Don't be a hero, Stalker. Oh, SCV, please. Please SCV be a hero. The SCV does not quite get the unit blocking down on the Stalker. Because really, I'm not sure if people know this, but you can actually run up with an SCV and hit like stop, move, stop, move, stop, move, and it will actually slow down a Stalker enough because of how it paths. It'll like walk into the SCV and then like stop a little bit, and then you move the SCV forward so that it can walk again, and it'll stop a bit when you stop the SCV. And you can actually kind of, if you do it right, you can actually slow down a group of Stalker, or one Stalker enough where your Marines can catch up and actually kill it. And I just got a Skype message. I don't think you can hear that because right now I'm just running through my microphone. However, it might come in on the sounds. So if you hear a Skype noise, don't worry about it. Hopefully that guy will not spam me with messages, because that was a very, very unimportant. He just wanted me to look at his profile picture. Don't know why you would message somebody for that, but apparently he did. Alright, well, anyway, we do have 6 Stalkers and 2 Zealots and a Sentry currently out for K-Bar. It's kind of an interesting build-up so far. Usually you see a couple more Sentries this early in the game, because basically Terran early game is actually very, very strong versus the typical Protoss player, but their mid and late game isn't quite as strong as far as being able to be countered by sentries, because in the early game, if they come at you with a giant push and you don't have enough sentries, you're just going to die, because you're not going to be able to wall off the ramp, or you're not going to be able to split enough of their army, or you're not going to be able to prevent enough damage to your Stalkers coming from their army to actually save yourself. Whereas if you have like 5 or 6 sentries, you can drop 5 force fields, put up Guardian Shield, and then you win the fight without a question. You'll probably kill off half their army, and the other half of their army will be forced to run. It would appear we do have Thors coming out at this point, so maybe the force fields, maybe not going for a massive amount of sentries was an okay idea, just because this Thor rush is very unorthodox, but it's actually pretty good when it comes to fighting through sentries, because they can actually just stomp on all of your force fields, and then you just kind of sit there going, oh, but I had so many sentries. Alright, well, it would appear that there are no upgrades currently coming out from K-Bar, just a couple more pylons. The first observer is up and out of there. Actually, that's like the 3rd observer. I am completely wrong. Wow, that was almost embarrassing. It looks like we have a slight move out from the army of Q-Dump. It's just Marines and a Thor at this point. It looks like it'll stay just Marines and a Thor and maybe 1 Marauder, or 2 Marauders, 3 Marauders. Who the hell knows? It looks like we have an Immortal currently coming out, and those Immortals will be extremely useful when it comes to fighting off the Thors. I'm surprised to see him going for such heavy Zealot numbers without even kind of hinting at going for charge, because Zealots without charge, not especially efficient, unless of course you get a high enough sentry number and you are very, very good with your force fields. And of course with Thors, that typically doesn't matter, because the Thors will just stomp on your force fields, and then all the Marines can run away, and then they're perfectly fine, because your Zealots are extremely, extremely slow. It looks like we even have Ravens coming out for Q-Dump, which is an extremely interesting strategy versus Protoss, because I don't actually know what Ravens block from Protoss. Do they? I think they block Stalker shots. They definitely don't block Zealots. I don't think they block Immortals, because they don't actually have projectiles. I don't think they block Colossus, although that would be hilarious. So basically the only damage he's going to be reducing is on Stalkers, which is a very, very small portion of this army. I mean, going for Ravens in any game is kind of a wonky decision, but it's good if you're fighting in an air Terran battle, because with 1 Raven you can have 4 Vikings take out like 6 or 7, I think, just because of how effective point defense drone is, especially if you have enough energy for 2 PDDs, which is possible. It's actually just a max Raven, just a maxed energy Raven. However, it looks like he's going to be going for Seeker Missile, which is a very good thing in beta right now, but it's not so great on live servers. I mean, it does one-shot a Zealot, I think, unless you count in armor, in which case it just barely doesn't one-shot a Zealot. I mean, it's a good ability, it's just not... Actually, wait. No. It doesn't even one-shot a Zealot in any situation. It 2-shots a Zealot when you're lucky. However, it would appear that we would have some Banshees coming out, and I've made quite a few actual technical errors this commentary. I'm kind of sad about that. And also, I would just like to say that I'm kind of sorry about not getting a game up on Monday, but I was doing stuff and things for New Year's, and I just didn't have time to produce one that day. and yet again I smashed myself in the face for not actually storing up replays. Also, I would probably be getting back into the forum showcase match commentary thingies by the time Kadonk gets back, which should either be today or tomorrow, and then we'll probably co-commentate through quite a few of those, because that is a lot of games to try to solo commentate and then solo render and solo upload. A lot of games. Now, of course, this Raven is going to be useful for the one job of sniping off observers. Still a little bit sketchy on the Seeker Missile. I guess if you got enough of them, it could be used to great effect to snipe off large amounts of Colossi, but you need to get quite a few of them, and honestly, just going for Vikings is way better, because, you know, you can reactor out a starport, get way more Vikings, get way more medevacs, which are extremely good for any amount of bio-based army. However, you know, Marines are kind of turning into not quite the base of this army. It's going to be primarily Thors going into the middle and end of this game. And actually, this is kind of an interesting force. Thor Banshee is something that I have not seen for a long time. It's something that is very kind of hard to see coming and counter in the current metagame. Is charge up? No, charge is not up yet. He could really use that charge against an army like this, because those Thors can be dangerous unless you start picking away at them early, because Thors just have such a crazy amount of health. They are slower than Zealots, so you can't actually run away from Zealots with them, but you can be reasonably effective with Thors versus Zealots, unless, you know, the Zealots have charge and can just charge up to your units and start swiping away at them right away. It would appear that we have Air Weapons 1 currently coming up for Q-Dump. I think he already has Vehicle Weapons 1? Yeah, Vehicle Weapons 2, or 1. So it looks like those Thors already have their primary upgrade up and good to go. The 5 Banshees currently are pumping that out. And he's actually going for 2 Banshee and 1 Thor production. This is a pretty heavy gas production cycle. He really should be dumping some stuff into Marines. And there we do have the 3 barracks coming out, 4 barracks coming out, so he's 6 barracks coming out. So he's really going to be kicking up that Marine production. This, like, barracks wall is a little bit sketchy. Actually, I think they can get out through the top of there, but if this barracks is like one spot over, all of the Marines would probably have to run down and around the mineral line to get back up to where they're supposed to be. I wouldn't be surprised to see him taking this base sometime soon. I'm also super surprised that no Terrans ever take this base, because it's actually reasonably good. It's very easy to defend with the high ground and the 2 destructible rocks. And it can be a very good ninja expansion, because you can kind of just build a command center, float it over there, and then be perfectly fine with anything that happens, unless of course it gets scouted. Q-Dump actually building up so much of a bank of minerals and going off for a little bit of a weird sniper mission with these Banshees, all cloaked almost instantaneously, which is strange, because if your opponent has an observer and they find you, then, you know, your Banshees are spotted, no matter whether they're cloaked or uncloaked. If your opponent has an army and they find your Banshees, then you just cloak your Banshees and try to kill through the most of the army as you can. And if you cloak right out of the gate, you have 2 Banshees uncloaked, a couple more Banshees just about to uncloak, and it gets a little bit awkward. So we have all the Banshees uncloaking at this point. This is still a lot of Banshees. They can do quite a bit of damage. However, they're all uncloaked, which is going to be a little bit awkward when it comes to fighting any amount of Stalkers. Now, of course, there isn't really a high amount of Stalkers. In fact, I think the Banshees could probably fight these Stalkers without much of an issue. However, there are 4 more coming in, so it's probably a good decision to kind of back off with those guys. He can go around the side of the base and just start sniping pylons and being super duper annoying, because these Banshees actually do a ton of damage. He's actually going to be going for his simulators, which is a reasonably good decision, because it stops that kind of gas income. And it looks like we do have the move out from K-Bar at this point, and this is going to be kind of a sketchy spot to move out into, because there are quite a few Marines and quite a few Marauders and quite a few Thors and quite a few Banshees and a Raven currently out for his opponent, so I'm not sure how well this is going to go. How many Templar does he have? He has 6 Templar. They all have at least 1 Storm at this point, so that's going to help out quite a bit. Do the Colossus have range yet? Yes, they do. So actually, this could work out reasonably well for K-Bar, just because Thors aren't the greatest unit versus Colossi. Now, of course, if this attack doesn't work out well, he basically automatically loses the game, because of this heavy Banshee harass that has been going on in his main base. But without those 9 Banshees, he might actually be able to win this fight, and it looks like he will be able to. As soon as that army disappeared, I'm really surprised to not have seen the Banshees get pulled back instantly. wow, Thors are actually really, really effective. However, I don't think they're going to be able to do enough damage just because of the Colossus and this Immortal. And ouch, yeah, that is going to be kind of the end of the game for Q-Dump. I guess he could have pulled back the Banshees and, you know, sniped the rest of this army. But really, that army was perfect to get killed by Banshees. Perfect. Because there were, like, no Stalkers. There was no anti-air. And if you're facing against a giant Protoss Death Ball like that, you need to rally up everything you have. Unless you have a really, really solid siege tank lineup, you need everything. Because, I mean, this is... Banshees are what? 3 supply each. This is like 27 supply of Banshees. I'm just going to check my facts on that. Yeah, they're 3 supply each. So he had 27 supply of his army fighting his opponent's base, which is kind of like having just a giant flock of Realists attacking your opponent's base and then trying to win with Infestors and Broodlords against a Protoss player. That usually doesn't work out that well. And that kind of just ended up awkward. Now, of course, no bases actually went down for Q-Dump, and K-Bar lost his entire army. So I can't believe that I'm going to say this, but this might actually work out. I would say that the biggest issue for K-Bar during that last engagement that might actually allow him to lose this game somehow is going to be not dropping enough storms in the early section. He dropped them kind of in the middle of the fight after most of his force was already gone. It should have been instantaneous. He gets in there, he drops storms on all the Marines and all of the Thors, and then he just starts feedbacking the Thors one by one. He did okay as far as feedbacking Thors goes, but it wasn't anything magnificent. We do have no Artosis pylons currently. It's going to take at least a couple of these to actually power down these buildings in any major form. And there's just nowhere, there's just no place to mass up enough Stalkers to take down the current Banshee force out here. And that is actually kind of surprising. I'm almost amazed that Q-Dump won this fight, won this game. I mean, I still think that it would have been way smoother if he had had his all of his Banshees at his main base, because if Q-Dump, or if K-Bar, excuse me, their names are very similar, had been building these gateways for the last little bit and he had gotten this 3rd base earlier and, you know, he hadn't had no Stalkers in his army and to defend the 3rd base, or the Naturals probes, that game would have gone much smoother for him. But honestly, there was a few big mistakes. I mean, Q-Dump actually asked me to very specifically give him things he could have done better, and that is primarily just finding out the composition of your opponent's army earlier on. Like, as soon as that army kind of poked its head at his Banshees, he probably could have scanned on top of it and just seen and kind of gotten a count of how many Stalkers were in that army, because it was only like 7 or 8. And Banshees could actually take that entire army, purely because there was nothing else that shot up. If he went into cloaked mode to waste energy away so that feedbacks weren't too high and he was good at dodging those storms, he really could have just wrecked through that entire army. And also, as soon as you decide not to do that, and you just decide to harass with the Banshees, keep an eye on your opponent's army. Have someone at the watchtower, have an SCV at the watchtower. Have a Banshee set out here that's ready to run away, so that as soon as that army starts moving out, you can either move your Banshees in and kind of go for the throat, as it were, by going for this High Templar tech and the Cybernetics Core, which I think he actually did manage to snipe. But definitely the High Templar tech is very important, along with the Forge and probably the Twilight Council, and also the Robotics Bay. All very important buildings. Or you just pull them back to defend. Those are your 2 options, because it gets a little bit sketchy if you don't do that right. He did manage to do enough. Again, he did manage to do enough damage with Banshees to actually survive, but it got a little bit awkward there near the end where he lost his entire army. So anyway, guys, if you would like any other Boisterous action, you can head over to youtube.com/user/boisteroussc2. And also, if you would like your games commentated, you can send them on into YouTube, or boisteroussc2@gmail.com. I'm gonna just like stop failing at my commentary, so I'm gonna sign out right now, and this is Boisterous signing out.